So, you want to get into 3D printing. Welcome back to the basement, everybody. Hope everybody's been having a great time. And just following through with what I said in an earlier video, trying to get this out there to more people so more and more people are interested in 3D printing. But so, the question that I'm posing today is you want to get into 3D printing, but you don't know, what printer you want, what cost, how much is too much, everything like that. So, we're going to try to break that down here in this video as best to my knowledge as we can. And let's go ahead and get on with the video. All right, everybody, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, please do hit that like and that subscribe button if you enjoyed the video. And today we're going to talk about all the things that you need to know to step into this world of 3D printing with us and hopefully have some fun and make some cool things and enjoy yourself. But I do know that in the beginning it is a little intimidating when you're going in. There's all kinds of printers. Today specifically there's printers up the wazoo. There's all kinds of 3D printers out there. There's all kinds of different types of materials. There's all kinds of different types of everything. So we're going to try to cover what I believe the most basic printers are, and we're going to, talk about them just a tiny little bit just to get you some ideas of what to look into, what to look up, and things like that. So the first thing on everybody's mind when it comes to 3D printing is obviously going to be cost. Cost can be a huge factor when it comes to getting into this hobby. Particularly considering how expensive machines used to be versus where we are today, which is not super expensive depending on the style of printer and what you're going to be doing with it. So the last thing we're going to talk about is going to be what it is that you want to do on your printer, and we're going to cover, how that ties into everything, and that's actually essentially going to determine the majority of the first two things that we're going to talk about. So let's go ahead and get into the first part, which is cost. So 3D printers can be a little pricey depending on the type of printer, the functionality of the printer, and things like that. So obviously the more it can do, the more expensive it's going to be. The nicer it looks, generally the more expensive it's also going to be. Nicer cost, nicer materials, things like that. So I want to start off with saying that you can get a printer for under $200 or at around $200, and it's a great machine. It's going to be right here. It's going to be the Bambu A1 Mini. The A1 Mini is a very small formatted printer, and it is an FDM printer, so you're going to have your filament running into it, and then the hot end, building it layer by layer as it goes around, and eventually getting a print. A lot of people are like, but that's really small. Like, I want to print some big, cool stuff, and you can. So it might take you a little bit longer, but you can still, achieve large size prints with any size printer that you get. So that's just going to be what it is for literally all the printers that I'm going to mention today. Obviously, the bigger it gets, the more things you can do in one shot versus splitting it up into multiple tiny little, full build plate squares that you have to then go back and remember which one's which and glue them back together and plastic weld them back together. And that could take some time, right? But it is possible. It just might take you a little bit longer than, say, printing on an A1 Mini that has a build plate of 180 millimeters by 180 by 180. So it's a relatively small build plate when you compare it to something, for example, like the Bambu P1P, which is going to run you about $400 to $500 depending on when you go out to look for it, and that's going to be 256 by 256 by 256. Or you get even bigger in this specific category, and you go down to the K1 Max, which is 300 by 300 by 300. And as far as like super fast 3D printers, that's about as big as they get. You do have something like the Elegoo Neptune 4 Plus and 4 Max, which are relatively large printers, and they also don't run you too much money. So in order of most expensive to least expensive, your K1 Max is definitely going to be your most expensive machine, running you around anywhere from $750 to $900, I believe is what the price range is right now. I could be wrong. I'll have a modified price if I'm wrong. And then you're going to look at your Bambu P1P, which is going to run you right around $500. Excuse me. Then you're going to move into your Neptune 4 Plus and 4 Max. I don't remember the exact pricing on that, so I'll have it here. And then your A1 Mini, which is without the AMS unit, it's going to run you about 200 bucks. So yeah, it can be relatively inexpensive, and you can find other printers that are also less expensive than the ones that I mentioned here. There's a ton of them, and I believe that I can make a whole other video talking about different brands: Creality, Bamboo, Elegoo. There's tons and tons and tons of brands of printers out there, but I figured I'd just take these, which are the printers that I have used. And except for the A1 Mini, but I mean any Bamboo printer is going to print like any Bamboo printer, so I decided to just put it out there. So that's your FDM price range, right? So you got anywhere from 200 bucks, I mean it could keep going up to the X1 Carbon, which I believe is like $1,200 without the AMS unit. I could be wrong, or the K2 Plus, which is I believe altogether about $1,500, somewhere around $1,400, somewhere around there. And those machines, obviously, you add the multi-material, so you can print in multiple colors. You add the K2 is bigger than the K1 Max, which doesn't make sense because it's a plus, not a max, but it is at, I believe it's 350 squared, so 350, 350, 350. I could be wrong. I'll have the right numbers here for that. It's not super released yet. It's still, some people are still getting it in and doing reviews. Didn't get one here, so Creality, what's up with that? I mean, I unboxed the K1 Max. I paid for it, but what I'm saying, just besides the point. Anyways, so those are your FDM printers that I have personally myself used and would recommend to other people to give them a shot. The K1 Max maybe not as much, but the K1 Max, if you're looking for a large volume print, I would recommend it over the Elegoo Neptune 4 Plus and 4 Max. Just because they're not Core XY machines, they're bed slingers, so you add an extra possibility of failure in the prints. So that means the build plate moves back and forth while the head of the printer moves side to side, and it essentially prints. So it can cause, there's more points of failure versus a Core XY. It literally, the build plate will move down, the head will move in whatever rotation it needs to get the print going, and the bed just moves down as the print goes up. And in the Neptune series printers, the head will move up and the build plate will move front to back, and then the head moves from left to right and up. So I feel like it just causes a little bit more points where you could have an issue. Then again, I'm okay with the K1 Max. I have a new one right here that it's doing really well, except for I think the filament sensor on it is now busted, and it's not detecting that it actually has filament in it. So fun times with that machine. I'll make a whole other video on that at some other point. And yeah, so let's move on to resin printers. All right, so this is where I'm a little new to. All I have that I've ever used in my entire life is the Saturn 4 Ultra. I know there's a Mars 5 Ultra, 4 Ultra, I forget what number it is. That's similar. It's just a lot smaller, and it costs a lot less money. And when it comes to resin, the Saturn 4 Ultra is a relatively fast machine, finishing prints about this size, multiple of them on the build plate at the same time within a couple of hours. I'm not 100% sure about the time when it comes to larger prints, because I stay relatively small on my printer, and I mean it's designed to not have a huge build plate and a huge build volume because it is resin. So yeah, I stick to miniatures, a couple of 3D printed things for helmets and things like that. I don't print anything too big, and it's the only resin printer I have. So that machine itself, I believe as of today, it's still $399.99. I know the price might eventually go back up, or it might permanently stay there. Who knows? There's also the Saturn 3 Ultra, which is the one before this machine, which is, I believe it's sitting at $289.99, and the Mars 5 Ultra, apologies, it is the Mars 5 Ultra, I did just double check, is sitting at around $269.99, and that's for the Ultra versions. There are the regular standard versions for the Saturn 4 and the Mars 5, which are slightly less in price. And why am I staying inside of this category of printers? Well, because I've only ever used Elegoo resin printers. I've never actually used any other types of resin printers. I would love to get my hands on all kinds of other resin printers and do all kinds of cool testing and compare and contrast the machines. But unfortunately, that has not been the case in my personal situation. It might change in the future, but we will talk about that when we get there. So resin printers are going to be slightly more expensive in the long run. And what I mean by that is it's not like an FDM printer where you just buy the printer, buy some filament, and go and smash the print button and print all the things. With these machines, you require a lot more stuff for your safety. I will have a link to the video where I talk about resins and things like that and how to stay safe up here somewhere or over here. I don't know exactly where it goes. But essentially, you have to buy a printer. You have to buy a wash and cure station, so you add an additional 100 and however much money for that. You have to add gloves. You have to add filters for taking the resin out, putting and then stuff like that. Alcohol or water, depending on what you choose to use. Whether it's water washable or just standard resin, which uses 99% alcohol, isopropyl alcohol to clean, and then if you do a wash and cure station like I have back there with the Elegoo stuff, or if you're going to do an ultrasonic cleaner and a cure station separately, you also need to account for that in the total cost. So resin printers, specifically the Saturn series printers, are relatively inexpensive, sitting at around $400, and the Mars 5 sitting at $270. But that's just for the printer. So again, I need to emphasize this. That's just for the printer. You're gonna need a wash and cure station. You're gonna need something to wash the prints in. You're gonna need something to cure the prints in. You can cure them out in the sun. However, you will have a hell of a time doing that during the winter months if you're somewhere like here in New England where it gets dark real fast. So I do recommend getting something like that, and it can drive the cost up. I mean, mine has a tent that it sits in, and it has the wash and cure station, the alcohol, the rags to clean, the bottle for the alcohol so I can spray things down, the additional bucket here that has the dirty alcohol so I can do a pre-wash before main washing. There's a lot that goes into resin printing, and again, I'll have a link to that video up top so you guys can check that out and see for yourselves what I'm talking about. With that, all that stuff out of the way, right? I apologize I don't have more information on other types of printers and their price. I will pop a couple of them here that I have seen people reviewing, the printers that I would like to play with, mainly some of the Anicubic printers that have come out recently, and a couple of the Elegoo printers, as well as maybe some BambuLabs printers, which are on the more expensive side, but are still an option for consumer-based printing. And yeah, so let's move on to the meat and potatoes of all of this, which is essentially, what do you want your printer for? That's the main objective when it comes to this video, is talking about what it is that you, the person printing things, is going to mainly want to print. Are you going to want to print helmets, right? So full helmets that you paint and wear for cosplay. Are you going to want to print armor for your cosplay? Do you not care for stuff like that? Do you want to maybe prototype your own stuff? Do you maybe want to prototype your own stuff, like this little energy drink can holder thing that I designed and printed, that's magnetically sealed and is meant to attach to a Milwaukee pack out thing. I don't know exactly what it's called, but the thing broke because this was one of the first iterations of it. Now what we're here to talk about. Do you want to sell 3D prints on things like Etsy, or start your own website, or do custom prints for companies that look for people to 3D print their products before they manufacture them in whatever it is that they need to manufacture them in? That all comes down to you, right? The user, the person who's going to print things. I like to just print whatever, and that might be the case for you, and that's completely fine, right? So you need to figure out what you want to do. So are you into things like miniatures, right? Are you into printing full sets of cosplay? Do you want to get into that? Do you want to print prototypes? Do you want to manufacture some finished products? Do you want it to help build your Etsy shop in a way that maybe you can't find to do it any other way? So maybe you have something specific in mind that you want to design, print, and add it to your Etsy shop, and then do things like that. It depends on what you want to do, determining whether it's a resin printer, whether it's a large scale printer, or whether you can get away with, you know, an older model 3D printer that's going to take a million years to print something out for you, or whether you want something super fast and you need things in multiple colors and things like that. So that's where it all comes down to you. And if you're like me, right? I like doing all the things. I like printing helmets and armor, right? So I have something that I'm working on here, which is the full set for that guy. I like printing things that I've designed, as I just showed you with the little energy drink cup holder that's for the Milwaukee Pack-Out stuff. Or if you like printing things to use around the house, like a simple little phone stand, right? So that you can watch your movies while you're cooking or while you're doing whatever it is that you're doing and need this. If you want to print miniatures, right? So like you want to maybe design your own little miniatures, or you want to print your own. Maybe you and your friends, you know, play some D&D or are in a Warhammer and you want to print your own little miniatures, things like that. It all depends on you. So I'll give you my thoughts on all of that. So when it comes to armor and helmets and things that you designed on your own, in my personal opinion, I feel that FDM printers are the way to go. And why do I say that FDM printers are the way to go? You generally can have a larger build volume. Most resin printers are relatively small. Resin can be relatively expensive, and if you don't print it right, things can become extremely heavy with resin. They can become extremely heavy with regular FDM printing, but they can ultimately cost you a lot more money. So what do I mean? If I would have printed this whole helmet in resin, it would have been in multiple parts, right? Because my printer is not that big, and I would have had to put it all together and do a ton more work on it than with this is all FDM printed. So this is all, well, not all of it. The glasses and, well, not the glasses, the eye protectors are made out of resin. They're clear red resin. I don't know if you can see that, which I did have to sand down and then buff out to get them to be transparent. These little vents on the side are also resin printed. So are these guys here, these little attachments here on the side, and this are also all resin printed. Now, that being said, right, you could resin print this entire helmet. But with resin prints, you run the risk of larger prints warping. You run the risk of things not really aligning very well, and then, you know, you just wasted, you know, $50, $60, 100, 250, depending on the resin, trying to print something like this, and now you can't use it because it's all bad. Now, again, that's not to say you can't, and should you? Probably not, but I do a lot of things that I shouldn't, like that Warhammer armor that, you know, all of this is by Galactic Armory, by the way, including the miniatures that I just showed you guys. It's all by Galactic Armory, and in Galactic Armory's post about the armor for the Warhammer stuff, they said to not print it, to use foam, and I said nay. Challenge accepted, sir. And I printed the human size scale that they have, not the actual scale, because that would weigh a ton, and it's all going to be FDM printed. But yeah, so it's up to you. What do you want to do, right? So do you want to resin print miniatures? Because you can. Super high detail. It looks much nicer than FDM. You can print miniatures on FDM. You'd have to get a 0.2 millimeter nozzle. However, I do find them to be a lot more fragile when removing the supports versus resin prints. Resin prints, when they come out, you know, you have your gloves on and your mask and your eyewear protection and hopefully something to protect your clothes. They're a little bit more malleable, so when you're going to remove supports, you know, things do tend to bend a little bit, not too much. And then you wash and cure them, and then they're, you know, sturdy. But you do get a lot more detail. So these two prints are exactly the same, right? One is FDM printed on a 0.2 millimeter nozzle, and one of them was in resin. And the one in resin, as you can see, has a base, and this guy's missing a foot. So The supports took a little bit of work to get off of the off of these little tiny models on the FDM printer, and both of the ones that I printed actually did break off by the feet, just because it's so thin right there, and they were both successful for the resin, right? So here's the one with resin, it has its base on, and it came out really nice. So I think that if you're looking to print miniatures, you know, either for you, for your friends, to sell in a shop, to do whatever it is that you want to do with it, I think resin would probably be the right direction to lean in. It is a lot more expensive. The machines aren't as high of a price in the beginning, but then you have to take into account everything else you have to get. You have to get a carbon air filters for a respirator. You have to get something like nitrile gloves. You always have to have on hand. You have to get napkins. I mean, not napkins. Paper towels. I use shop towels to clean the inside of the resin tank. You need to get protective eyewear. Maybe something to protect your clothes. If you're in a basement like me, not somewhere where there's open air circulation, you might want to get some like air filters with carbon filters in them to help eliminate the smell as much as possible. And on top of that, you need a wash and cure station, or at least something that you can put alcohol in and wash a piece and then take it out and buy like a UV lamp and sit it in front of, or let it sit out in the sun all day, and hopefully it cures all the way through. So there's a lot more that goes on when it comes to post-processing off of these guys. On my FDM printers, I can literally just pull a piece out, take off all the supports, and then I'm done, if that's how it's going to be, you know. And on the same flip of that, if you're looking to print, you know, cosplay or helmets or prototype certain things, depending on what it is that you're prototyping, FDM printers might be your better bet. It's faster sometimes. Well, it's less expensive sometimes. It's less work in the slicer, so we'll talk about the slicer in another video that's upcoming. But it's less work in the slicer because you don't generally have to hollow things out when you're FDM printing. You do most of the time when you're running a resin print, unless it's meant to be solid, but then it's a heavy and it's an expensive piece, and if you break it, then you know you got to reprint it and then run out of all your resin, and then you got to buy more, which I have experienced, particularly with the eyes on that helmet that is sitting right here staring at me. I did snap those a couple of times before I got it to work, and I ran out of resin. But anyways, so yes, so excuse me. And I do have to say, if you've done some research, you obviously are sitting here going, well, yeah, you idiot. It makes more sense to buy an FDM printer if I want to print out helmets and things that are really big and stuff like that. And yeah, but you would be surprised how many people are like, you can print a helmet with a printer? Like, that's crazy to them. And it's just the not being exposed to it part, right? So maybe it's somebody who's never even heard of a 3D printer or doesn't even really care about the technology, and is watching this video for the first time going, hey, this is something cool, maybe I'll get into it. And they're like, what? I can print a helmet, a Darth Vader helmet, this Warhammer helmet, a Helldiver helmet, any kind of helmet I want on an FDM printer, and then just, you know, paint it myself. That's pretty cool, right? And then, again, same flip of that, they might not know that they can do the same thing on a resin printer, but there are a lot better options when it comes to that. Resin printers can be relatively expensive if all you want to do is print out your cosplay. I would definitely go the FDM printer route with that, and you get some pretty sturdy parts, you sand them down, you paint them yourself, and they look super cool. And you can do that with both, but again, FDM might be cheaper because the cost of filament can be significantly less versus the cost of resin, and resin can be extremely brittle, so if you accidentally drop that helmet while sanding it and it shatters into a million pieces, you gotta start over. At least with an FDM print, if it falls on the floor and it has a crack in it, you can fill it with some Bondo and sand it back down, and everything's fine and dandy. I haven't had really pieces of a helmet break when they fall, when they're FDM printed. I have had a lot of very brittle resins that literally the piece will fall on the floor and pieces just fall off and it's broken and have to reprint it again. So yeah, and then as well for prototyping, FDM might also be better when it comes to that. And the only reason I say that is because you're going to print a lot of one thing over and over and over again, especially if you're just trying to get something to work. And that can get really expensive again with resin because of the machine. The cost of resin can be higher than, you know, PLA. PLA can be relatively inexpensive, especially if you start buying it in bulk. Resin can be relatively inexpensive, but generally in most cases, for a nice tough resin that's going to withstand, you know, whatever it is you're trying to do with it, it's going to be pretty pricey. It's going to be up there, you know, anywhere from $20 all the way up, and it could just, you know, it could just not be worth it to you. But PLA Tough or some Pet G rolls for like $11 and some change when you buy them in bulk, that's really nothing, and especially if you're going to print it over and over and over and over and over again. So that's my take on literally all of this. I mean, it's up to you in the end what you decide you want to do, whether it is you want to go with an FDM printer. I keep pointing this way, but they're down there. I promise I do have them. An FDM printer or a resin printer, but it does matter in terms of what you want to do with it, because you might get a resin printer and try to print a helmet, and it might not work out very well, and then you might kick yourself a little bit and be like, dang. You know, and to be honest, most helmets don't need a ton of detail. They just don't. Like an Iron Man helmet, surprisingly, doesn't have that much detail. It's just, you know, it's mostly flat and sharp corners, and FDM printers have no problem reproducing that. And the same thing with this helmet here. It doesn't have a ton of stuff on it. The stuff that did have a lot of detail in it, I resin printed. So, hey, maybe you want both. Get both. Hey, that's even better. You have best of both worlds, and you can FDM print, and you can resin print the parts that have a ton of detail, and you good to go, right? But anyways, guys, that's my take on it, right? If you're new to 3D printing, welcome. The more people that join this, the better it is for everybody. The more things get more advanced, the more we get to get cool stuff in printers, the more upgrades on future models we'll get, and then we can just all go from there. And if you guys are interested, again, I have a ton of videos related to FDM printing, and I have some videos about resin and things like that, and what I've tested, what I've done, what I've used, what I use, and what I hope to accomplish at some point. And I want to say a huge thanks to all 450 something of you guys who actually watch my videos. Thank you. I do appreciate you. It does mean a lot to me. This is a hobby to me, but I love it so much that I just wanted to make content about it and talk to people about it, and hopefully someday, you know, have a giant fleet of 3D printers that I have, you know, talked to you guys about and shown you guys stuff on, and just watch the technology take off until we're, you know, 3D printing meat or something crazy like that. You know, you never know. I mean, we 3D print metal now with lasers, and yeah, maybe we'll get there. Maybe we'll do some cool things down the line, but. Until then, I'm just daydreaming. I do appreciate all you guys. I appreciate all the support, all the comments, all the likes, all the shares, all the everything, guys. I really do appreciate that. Without you guys, I would not be doing these videos, and I'm gonna try to make more. Quick little side note, just a quick little life update here for you guys. I made the video. The last video that I posted talking about the direction I wanted to take the channel for the time being, you know, bringing new people into 3D printing, things like that, and how I was going to have content coming out super fast and super quick, and then my daughter was born. Yay, she's healthy, happy, healthy. Mama's happy, healthy. My son is very happy with his sister. He's a little jealous, but, you know, that happens. And it literally happened as I'm, like, getting ready to start filming a bunch of stuff. So if you guys like the video, if you guys want to see more content like this, please feel free to go to my channel, check out all my other videos that I have. But most importantly, please do leave me a like if you like the video. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Turn on your little bell notifications if you haven't already for when I do upload content. That way you know and you're updated, and you don't have to be like, oh, this dude hasn't updated in like a month, and then it's like, oh, look, a new video. But yeah, guys, I will catch you guys in the next video, and bye, everybody.
And when I feel like this, I'm immortal. When I feel like this, I'm immortal. When I